I'm taking this Yamaha TZ 250 4TW and completely changing the way it works. We're going to change the engine from a 50-56 to a 54-54 bore and stroke. This will let us use the latest Yamaha TZ 250 5KE parts and make this little bike a rocket ship. We're going to take it and race it in the ACU 250 British Championship. I've been racing a TZ 250 since 2023. We race in the ACU 250 British Championship. In 2024 we come second. That's when I broke my wrist. So the last round, fighting for the championship, broke my wrist. So we run a Yamaha TZ 250 4TW. Now this is one of the older bikes, so the engine's still based on the TZR engine. That's the road going cases, so everything's a little bit heavier. It's a different stroke to the later bikes. The later bikes, they were prototype bikes. So they had a 54-54 bore and stroke. Now the older bikes had a 50-56 bore and stroke. Doesn't really come into it a lot, but as we're chasing the later bikes, the faster bikes, we've decided that we've come to the peak of the 50-56 bore. We've tried everything we've got. So on the dyno we use, we are pushing 75 brake horsepower. Now the best of the 5KE, the later bikes, has been pushing 82 brake horsepower. So me being me, I came up with the idea of changing the TZ engine. So this is the 4TW engine and this one is a 50-56. And we have built a new engine for 2025, 26, 25 we missed, so 2026. And this is a 54-54. So we have the 5KE crankshaft, 5KE, the latest barrels, cylinders and heads. And then the bottom end is all 4TW. So we've had to have the cases machined. And everything's fitted in there nice, and that is what we're doing. So at the moment we've got the engine out of the bike, and then what we're doing is we're going to set up this engine to go into the bike. So the first of the problems that I've come up with is timing the ignition. So the ignition is timed on millimetres from top dead centre. So this one's timed for 1.8 millimetres from top dead centre. Now this one is 54 stroke instead of the 50 mil stroke. So obviously the measurement's not going to be the same. So what I've got to do is I've got to put a timing wheel on, work out the degrees the ignition's set at, and then work out what the degrees on this engine is in millimetres, and then we have a base setting for the ignition. So guys, as you can see, we've got the timing wheel fitted, we've got a little pointer on here, and we've got the dial gauge fitted in the end of the cylinder. So what we've got to do is we've got to find top dead centre. I've cheated a little bit, I've already done it. And what I've done is I put the dial gauge on, and then you set it to 0. Once you found 0, then you can move it to a set point, which I used 1 millimetre. 1 millimetre worked out as I had a reading of 17 and 13. Added them together, that makes 30, divided it by 2, that makes 15. So to get the centre, we had to set the pointer at 15 degrees at 1 millimetre, and then check it either side at 1 millimetre back. And that worked well. So now what we need to do is to set it to 0. We know that the crank actually turns the opposite direction. I've got the flywheel here, so we have the arrow and it turns the unexpected way. It goes counterclockwise. So what we want is before top dead center. At 1.8 is where the ignition was set. So if we turn this clockwise, that'll take us to before top dead center. And what we want is we want a reading of 1.8 on the dial gauge. So we go around, there's 1, and then we're coming up, and there is 1.8. Now that gives us bang on 20 degrees before top dead center. So the ignition starting point is 20 degrees before top dead center. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write all this down. So at 1.8 millimeter, we are 20 degrees before top dead center. Right, I'm going to swap this over onto the new engine, and then we'll re-go from there. Okay guys, I've got the timing set up on the 54mm stroke engine. So I've got this zeroed, so what I've done is, like I say, gone to 1mm past. That works out as 14 degrees on this engine, so it's 1 degree different at 1mm. And we've got that done, so then we've got the 0 is at top dead center. Right, so what we want to find out now is at 20 degrees, how many millimeters is the piston stroke. So what we want to do is we want to rotate it clockwise, because that's the opposite way that the engine turns, and then that will give us the before top dead center. So starting at top dead center, and then we want to go to 20 degrees. So that's 1mm. And then it actually works out as bang on 2mm to 20 degrees. So now we know that 20 degrees equals 2mm. So it actually only gives a difference of 0.2mm. But that's where the ignition pickup was timed to on the original motor. So we know if we set this to 0.2, we're going to be firing at the same degrees. Now whether that's right for a 54mm engine, we don't know until obviously the engine goes off to the dyno and you can have a play on a setup. But at least for a first start, I know the ignition's going to be sparking at exactly the same point in the engine cycle that it was before. So I can say if I set it at 2 degrees, I should be safe to start the engine. So now I'll get the ignition built up onto the engine, and then we can go about fitting the engine back into the bike. The only other little job that I've got to do is modify the power valve brackets so that we can put the cables on. I left that until the engine was out so I could see what the cable mounting was like on the old engine, and we can get that sorted, and then I think she is ready to go into the bike. Right guys, I've just fitted the ignition, zeroed the dial gauge, and now we know we have to set the ignition at 2mm. So what we're going to do is we're just going to rotate the engine 1mm and 2mm. Right, so 2mm, that should be where the engine wants to be. And now you can't see it on the camera, I'll take a photo in a minute, but there is a line here and there's a line on the rotor, and we need to get them lined up nicely to get it timed. Okay guys, well that's about as far as I can get at the moment. The bike's pretty much back together. Just got the pipes to go on and then the body work, and then check the levels, and she's ready for fire up. One of the main jobs we've got to do is, as I was saying, the power valve cable adapters. I've got to make it so my plates that I've already cut actually hold the cables in place where they want to go. And then we can adjust the power valve cables and get the rest of the bike built. So let's do that. Okay guys, so this is the 40W power valve cable holder. I'm not sure if you can see, but basically these are the plates I've made for the 5KE barrels. We've got a left and a right, and we need to make these cable things here. Now what they look like is a 10mm bit of tube with a drill in about 6mm in the top that goes halfway down to where it's got, say, a 2mm drilling all the way down to the bottom, and then it fits in the hole and somebody's welded it onto the bottom. So the cable sits halfway down and then tracks down to the parts. Now these brackets, I've marked them to where I think the cables will look like they'll fit nicely. They're a 55mm plate. One marks at 15 and the other one is at 45. On this one, 55mm plate, and I marked this one at 20 and 48. So we'll probably go for 15 and 45 just to keep it equal on the pair of them. guys, that's it for part one. As you can see, we've got the engine in, we've got the bike running, we've run the engine in and we've run it on the dyno. The graph isn't that good, it's got a massive flat spot, so the next thing to do is to get the bike over to Andy Ball at 2T Engineering, and he sets up the Zealtronic ignition and he'll get this thing running perfect, and then we can see whether we've got an improvement or a loss, whether it's worthwhile with a 54/54, and the next steps to keep improving this project.